Well, as you know, that the Banyana Banyana African Crown quest has hit an early at a very unexpected roadblock. The 2-1 defeat to Tanzania has left South Africa under immense pressure at the 2026 Women Africa Cup of Nations. So questions are being asked about a performance that kind of lacked the sharpness as well as the intensity and composure that we've come to expect, though, from the former African champions. So despite creating opportunities, Banyana were punished for missed chances and also costly defensive lapses. With Tanzania, I guess they were making history by claiming their first ever WAFCON victory. And you could tell by how happy they were at the end of the game. And with the powerhouse Ivory Coast now waiting in a must-win showdown, the margin for error has completely disappeared. I mean, can Banyana regroup, and what went wrong against Tanzania? And how does the team actually recover mentally and tactically? And that's why joining us now is the woman who has had and led Banyana Banyana to unprecedented success and one of the most respected coaches on the continent. That's Dr. Desiree Ellis. Coach, thank you so much for your time. Good evening and welcome to the show. Yeah, I was just saying, I can imagine what it's like for you and the team. It was a bit of heartbreak last night watching how it ended and how it unfolded. For you, how do you reflect back on that with just all the hours that have lapsed since that final whistle?
Look, Rob, we knew it was going to be a difficult game. The matches that we've played against him have been very tight. We knew that. Of course, we were dominant in everything but the scoreboard, but we don't win games like that. We created enough opportunities to win it any other day. And, they got two chances and they punished us. We were sloppy in how we lost the ball in areas that we should have protected the ball a bit more. And they punished us at the end. Even though they scored that goal at the end, we still had one or two chances. And that is the difference. They had those two. They were clinical. We had so many opportunities, but we didn't finish it off in the first half. We could have probably been 3-1 or 3-0 before they scored. In the second half, we had ample opportunities, and it's come back to bite us. We also in the first half were very lackluster. I think in the second half we picked that up a bit, but we can't play in patches. We gotta go full out. So we're reviewing obviously what we're doing and who we playing next. And as you said, it's a must win. There's now no margin for error anymore.
I mean, I listened very carefully to the things that you were saying afterwards, Coach, and you were very straightforward. You said it was not good enough, and I think we all agree with that. I agree with what you've just said now, that there were a lot of chances that were created but couldn't convert it. I mean, do you just knuckle it down to simply poor finishing, or do you think that the team kind of lacks the composure under pressure? Have there not been too many of the teams that have been at that level before, or the individual players? Sorry, what do you knuckle it down to?
Look, I think when you're behind and you're chasing a game, everybody gets in a position where they think they can score. And that shows how badly they want to win this game. But I think the lack of composure in front of goal more than anything, because we did create. It was the lack of composure, maybe taking that extra touch, maybe finding the free player in the box, maybe taking that extra touch to put it on your stronger foot, etc. Because we got into good positions where we could have scored. Others were probably half chances, but also when we conceded, we needed to be better. We needed to close the player down. We needed to protect the ball. We needed to stop the throw in at the end there where they created that one opportunity. So we needed to be better in a lot more things than what we were, and we are better than that, but unfortunately on the field we didn't show that, and it was a very lackluster first half. But as I said, second half was much better, but still not where we should be or where we want to be, and it's going to take an immense effort now in this next game against Ivory Coast, because they were really clinical last night. They took all the opportunities that they got and were defensively very sound. So it's never was going to be an easy game, but becomes the final before the final, if you want to call it that.
No, without a doubt. And I mean, we'll chat further about Ivory Coast. I mean, they enjoyed and dominated the ball possession. I think their total number of shots was something close to 12. They had 6 of those that were on target. So really a big performance that came through from their side. Maybe back to Banyana as well. together with the changes that you had made and implemented, especially towards the end of the game, what was it? I think it became very much more attack-minded. It was about the height and offering the ball into the box to try get something from a dead ball situation or from a set piece and so on. Just tell me a little bit more about your thinking then when those changes had to be enforced.
We were trying to play off that second ball, not necessarily getting it to them to score, but trying to play off that second ball, trying to, win that aerial battle up front and getting the second ball and trying to play off that. But the ball just didn't fall our way when we were challenging for those balls, because remember, Tembi is short, Magia is short, Hilda plays out on the wing, so we were trying to now say, okay, now we're going to go for it, because you lose 2-1, you could lose 3-1 if they eat you on the counter, and and that's where they were very, 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 very aggressive. But that was the plan, just to put it in there, to make sure that we get that bounce off there, to be able to control it and put it in the back of the net, or bring a cross in, or feed off it and put someone through. So that was basically the plan in going that way, Rob. And that's why we selected, the players we selected, so that if we needed to change something, we can change something.
And change you did, because I can imagine the frustration and maybe just the tears and the disappointment at the end of the game really showed how the girls took that. What was it like, though, in the change room, given all of those expressions of disappointment and emotion?
It was very quiet in the change room, Rob. They'd gone for their ice baths, they've gone for their rub downs as part of recovery. But it was extremely quiet in the change room, and I just needed to tell them that, yes, it hurts. Yes, we didn't get the result what we wanted, but we had a reaction when they scored. We had a positive reaction and scored immediately. We created enough chances to win the game, but still believing. Still believing that we're still in it. It's still in our hands. It becomes more difficult, but it's still in our hands. It becomes a must-win game. In actual fact, both games now become a must-win games for us to be able to qualify for the next stage, to be able to realize their dream of going back to the World Cup. And everybody knows that now. There's no margin for error anymore.
Because all of these numbers have got to be converted into a response now, because we've talked about the frustration of having enjoyed the better of the ball possession with 63%. They're only at 37. We've talked about the 24 shots compared to their 10. Also the 9 on target compared to their 5. Is a case of now, ladies, you know what's at stake. You know what you've done. But in football, it's about how often that net bulges, and when it doesn't, you will get punished. So just from a mentality perspective, I mean, how do you lift the team after that painful defeat that we've spoken about with so little time that is left now until the next game?
I think just showing them some positive things, of things that they did really well. Obviously showing them the goals we conceded and how we conceded and what we could have done better. You have to do that. You don't want a repeat of that. But now you also want to obviously look at the positives. For example, getting an opportunity, maybe getting another touch, getting an opportunity, maybe playing it to someone in a better position, because we did create those opportunities to show that, if we had made better decisions, if we had a little bit more composure in front of goal, we could have been speaking a different story now. It's making them just still believe that it is possible, because if we don't believe, then the battle is lost. But making them believe that it's still possible, making them believe that it wasn't one of our best games, and we probably could have gotten a result even though it wasn't one of our best games. But now we have to really, really step up, and we have to really, take account and show and make sure that, we leave no margin for error. Make sure that if we run, we have to run. Make sure that if we have to tackle, we have to tackle. Not that we didn't do that in the game, but it's going to take a huge effort, because Ivory Coast played really, really well last night. They look really like a sick machine, and getting 3 points, obviously buoyant after they being out of WAFCON for so long. Getting that 3 points obviously gives them a lot of momentum. But us not getting the result now also we need to realize that it's do or die. It's you have to go for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what's the treatment room looking like, Des? I mean, one or two players were down. I wasn't sure if there was anything serious from what we saw.
I think there's this new rule, Rob, that if you go off injured, you have to wait on the sideline for a minute. And some of it looked rather serious. Some of it looked like head injuries, and players didn't want to come off knowing that, they're going to be out for a minute. I think I don't want to comment on the rule, but it's a very fine line, especially if there's a head injury. Now you have to come out and you have to stay out for a minute. You can surely see when someone's not really getting an injury, and then that law should apply. You have to use your discretion where that is concerned, and it could have been worse with there being, the head injuries, because there was a lot of clashes. It's not too bad, Rob. I think we have players that are resilient, and I think they've shown their resilience, and the treatment room is not too bad. A couple of knocks, yes, but it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's always experimentation when it comes to the rules. I was even reading today about what's going to be happening in the brand new season. So I don't want to confuse people with too many IFAB rule changes. But, oh, my goodness, it's like an experimental room or a science lab where you're just going through experiment after experiment. But I do hope, though, that rules aside and everything aside, that the team does gather the momentum that we know they are capable of. And we as a country will certainly be watching again. And I don't know what your feeling was. I mean, we were just watching and seeing an empty stadium. I could probably hear the Deputy Minister of Sport singing in the grandstand there by herself.
Yeah, yes, it
I don't
was
know what
very
it was
empty.
like for you.
It was very empty. It was very empty. It was very empty, but we still have to go ahead and play the game. I had a few fans shouting for us, and you could probably hear that as well.
Yeah. No, I think everything aside, though, Des, as a country united behind the belief in Banyana Banyana, I'm sure you believe, as you always do when you venture off into such missions, that, given what lies ahead, if I had to ask you a question, if you still believe that Banyana could still win the WAFCON.
Of course, Rob. We could still qualify for the World Cup. That is our first mandate. Of course, that's still possible. Last year, we drew with Tanzania in our first game, and we got out of the group stage, got to the semi-finals. So everything is possible, but you have to believe, and you have to have the willingness to do what needs to be done. That's the most important thing. We're just disappointed that we disappointed ourselves, and of course that we disappointed the nation, because that's the last thing we want to do.
Yeah, no, I can hear that, and I do thank you on the back of all that has happened, is that you do find time to update us here in South Africa with what is happening with our national team that we pride ourselves of, and wishing you everything the best as you prepare the soldiers for yet another key battle at the WAFCON, and everything of the best.
So thank you, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. That's the Banyana Banyana head coach. That's the one and only Dr. Desiree Ellis joining us right here on #MSW. I think you can tell from her voice, you can tell the disappointment is still there. It lingers, as it should. Again, I repeat, as it should, because it's not only us that feel it. The players were in tears for all of those who did watch the game and watch it very, very closely. But there are signs that they want to pick up the pieces and they want to journey ahead of the game against Cote d'Ivoire.